On Monday morning, the foreman called Michael into the trailer and handed him a plastic bag with his name scribbled on it. Inside were his gloves and a wrinkled write-up for breaking a bathroom sink the day before. "Third one this month," the foreman said in front of the whole crew. "One more and you are gone." The guys laughed as Michael stepped back out into the dust with that paper burning in his hand. Rent was already late and his phone bill had bounced that morning. They were gutting an old 3-story in Houston near Midtown. A tech startup had bought the lot. Michael was on wall duty in what used to be someone's living room. Drywall came off in heavy sheets. Behind it, old wood lath and a mess of wiring. He swung the sledge too hard at a vertical stud and the hammer bounced off something solid that rang instead of cracking. He froze, then hit the same spot again with the claw side. Wood splintered and dust puffed out, but the sound was wrong, a dull metal thud. He pulled his respirator down and reached into the cavity. His fingers brushed cold, smooth steel. Box edges. Not pipe, not duct. A box wedged between studs and wrapped in some flaky plastic. A coworker yelled from behind him that he was slowing down, that the foreman was watching. Michael yanked harder. The box shifted an inch and jammed. Nails screeched. For a second he thought about calling the boss over, then remembered the write-up in his pocket. He grabbed his pry bar, jammed it along the side of the box and leaned with all his weight while footsteps came up the hall. The box finally tore free just as a shadow fell across the broken wall. The foreman stopped in the doorway and saw the mess. Splintered studs, plaster everywhere. Michael sweating over a gray metal rectangle the size of a lunch cooler. "What is that supposed to be?" he asked in that tone that meant trouble. Michael said it was probably old wiring junk and kicked some drywall over it with his boot, trying to look bored. The foreman grunted, checked his watch and said they were behind schedule on this unit. He ordered Michael to finish the wall and left, boots thudding away down the hall. Pulse racing, Michael slid the box behind a fallen section of stud and piled broken sheetrock on top. Every time someone walked past, he was sure they could see straight through him to the hidden metal. At lunch, the crew sat on overturned buckets in the parking lot. Someone showed off a sports bet win on his phone, and another guy joked that Reyes could not even keep a sink intact. Michael barely ate. All he could see in his head was the gray corner of the box and the faint rubbery smell of old ceiling gaskets. What if it was full of nothing? What if it was something that got him fired or arrested? The building had a security guard at the gate and cameras on the corners. Getting anything out would take planning. By late afternoon, they finished the floor and the foreman sent everyone down to load debris into the dumpsters. While the others argued about who had to climb in and stomp the pile flat, Michael remembered that the back stairwell camera had been out of order all week. The guard complained about it every morning. Heart pounding, he grabbed a trash cart, hurried upstairs alone and dug the box from its hiding place. It was heavier than it looked, with rubber ribs around the lid and a dull padlock crusted with paint. He dumped broken drywall over it in the cart and was shoving it toward the stairwell when the guard suddenly pushed the door open from below. The guard eyed the overflowing cart and the dust on Michael's clothes. "Long day, huh?" he said, wiping sweat from his shaved head. Michael forced a grin and said they were trying to beat the rain. The guard nodded and took a call on his radio, turning away just enough for Michael to slip past and down the stairs. On the lowest landing he stopped. No camera in the corner, only a dead red light and an old cobweb. He peeled off some of the drywall chunks, revealed the gray lid and traced the raised letters on the side with his thumb. Some outdoor equipment brand he did not recognize. There was a cold thrill in realizing whoever had hidden it expected water, fire, time. After shift he clocked out like siempre, fist bumped the guys and walked to the far end of the parking lot where his faded pickup waited under a tree. The box sat under the rubble in the cart beside the dumpsters. In one quick motion he lifted it, back screaming, and slid it under a tarp in his truck bed. A neighbor from another crew called out if he wanted a beer, but Michael waved him off and drove away with both hands locked on the steering wheel. At his small apartment in East End, he carried the box up the stairs one step at a time. The metal was cold and rough against his palms, edges digging into his thighs when he paused. Inside his living room that doubled as everything, he set it on the coffee table, turned off the TV, and just stared at it. He found a rusted hacksaw in his toolbox and tried the padlock first. The blade skated uselessly. Next he tried his old angle grinder. Sparks flew, lighting up the dim room, and his landlord thumped the ceiling from downstairs. He killed the grinder and finally noticed 4 latches with rubber seals along the lid that made the lock mostly decorative. Someone had trusted the box more than the padlock. Hands shaking, he flipped each latch one by one. Air hissed softly as the seal broke, smelling like dust and faint machine oil, and the lid lifted with a rubbery creak that made the hairs on his arms stand up. Inside, everything was packed in gray foam cut to shape. 2 external hard drives sat side by side, each wrapped in plastic, each with a label in neat black marker that read BTC Backup 1 and BTC Backup 2. Between them, a sealed Ziploc held a folded index card with numbers and English words stacked in rows. Michael was not a tech guy, but even he knew what BTC usually meant. It was not some random company logo. Bitcoin. His chest tightened. He had seen enough headlines about people losing passwords worth millions. Now there were 2 drives on his table and a piece of paper that might be the key. First rush of excitement hit, then just as fast came panic. What if someone came looking for it? What if the box was tied to some lawsuit, some missing person, something on the news he had ignored? He took photos of everything with his phone, then turned off the light like the FBI could see through his thin walls. His little sister Sophia worked front desk at a co-working space and knew more about computers than he ever would. The next evening, he drove to her place in Pasadena, towing the box wrapped in a blanket. On the way, he rehearsed a lie and then gave up. When she opened the door and saw his face, she asked what happened, and he just said, "I found something at the demo job, and I need you to tell me if I am crazy." Her tiny dining table soon held the 2 drives and the card. She squinted at the words. Looked like one of those recovery phrases you see in YouTube videos about crypto wallets. She plugged one drive into her laptop, and for a moment nothing happened. Michael's stomach dropped. Then the drive spun up with a soft buzz and folders appeared. Inside was a single encrypted wallet file and a text note, dated 2013, that read in plain words that whoever held the phrase owned the coins. Sophia stared at the screen, then at her brother, then leaned back and asked exactly how much demolition he had done before finding this. They downloaded a well-known open-source wallet app and followed step-by-step instructions, typing each word from the card into the recovery screen. Michael insisted on double-checking every word, terrified of making some irreversible typo. When he hit confirm, the program froze for a few long seconds that felt like an hour, then loaded a single account with a balance that made him forget how to breathe. The number sat there on the screen, more money than 4 lifetimes of construction shifts. Old transactions showed big buys from a decade earlier when Bitcoin cost less than a used tire. Sophia whispered that this was serious life-changing money and they needed a lawyer before touching anything. Michael wanted to drive straight back to the job and confess and maybe split it, maybe something. Then he remembered the write-up, the years of under-the-table overtime, the fact that nobody had told the crew about any box in the walls. They made an appointment with an attorney who handled real estate and digital assets in downtown Houston. The waiting room smelled like coffee and printer ink. When they told him the story, his eyebrows went up in stages. He asked for the address of the building, the name of the property owner, and whether any contract mentioned found property. He explained in calm, patient words that things embedded in a structure during demolition often fell into a gray area. Former owners, current owners, even the demolition company could try to claim it. Plus, the IRS would be very interested in any sudden transfer. Michael walked out feeling like the box had turned into a bomb that could go off in court, in taxes, in headlines. That night, his foreman texted him to come in early the next day. "We need to talk," the message ended, and there was no emoji to soften it. At dawn, Michael parked outside the site with his heart thudding in his throat. The building already looked smaller, half gone. The foreman met him at the gate with a clipboard, not with security or police as Michael had feared, but with a tight look. Corporate had decided to bring in another crew for the interior, he said. Michael was being shifted to a different project on the north side. Less hours, but still a job. As the weeks passed, he and Sophia followed the lawyer's plan. They documented everything, kept quiet, and slowly moved a portion of the Bitcoin into a regulated exchange under a new contracting company name. Taxes were brutal, but what stayed after was still more than he had ever imagined. Michael left the crew life and registered Reyes Build and Restore, starting with small remodels in neighborhoods like the one he grew up in. He hired 2 guys from his old site first, paying them better than they had ever seen on hourly work. Word got around that his company actually finished jobs on time and did not disappear with deposits. The youth center idea came a little later, after he drove past the old building lot one day and saw the shiny new offices going up. He thought about the kids who hung around that block with nothing to do and too many ways to get into trouble. With some of the remaining Bitcoin converted and the rest held for the long haul, he bought an old warehouse 3 streets away and turned it into a place with a basketball court, tutoring rooms, and a small workshop full of donated tools. Some nights he sat on the bleachers while teenagers played pickup games under buzzing lights, and he thought about the metal box that had waited for years inside a wall no one remembered. He never told the full story to the kids. For them, the center was just the Reyes place, somewhere to be safe and loud and young. When crews from his company now tear into old walls, he still listens for that odd metallic ring under the swing of a hammer. Most days there is only dust and studs and wiring, and that is fine. One hidden box had already changed his life once. The real work now was everything he chose to build with what it left him.